Okay, welcome to the webinar, everyone. Once again, my name is Dave. Today's session will be a high-level overview of the capabilities of NVivo. I just want to let you know that you are all muted. However, if you do have any questions for me, please feel free to send them over using the question box feature, and I'll be sure to answer those questions as you post them. If I'm unable to answer your question at that exact moment, I will certainly go back and answer all questions at some point during the webinar, although there is a rather large audience, so there is a small chance I won't be able to get to all questions. If if I don't happen to answer your question, please feel free to email me directly after the webinar has concluded. I'll be sure to answer any questions, via email as well. Also, if you happen to be experiencing any technical difficulties, whether audio or video, please also let me know using the question box feature. That way you can go ahead and try to address those issues in real time. Please also refrain from using the raise hand feature. Because you are a muted audience, there's little benefit to raising your hand. If you have a question or comment you would like to share, please just use the question box feature instead, okay? All right, so now that housekeeping is out of the way, let's go ahead and move on. So whether you're a student with a ton of articles to get through for a term paper, a tenured faculty conducting a mixed method case study, or an industry professional making sense of social media data, it's easy to get lost in a lot of unstructured, non-numeric information, also known as qualitative data. NVivo provides structure to unstructured data, helping you quickly unlock insights and make something beautiful to share. So here's a quick look at our agenda for the day. Very quickly, I'm going to go over who is QSR, what is NVivo, who uses NVivo, why do they use NVivo, introduction to the actual software, and I'll also go over help and training resources, both paid and free. So QSR International was founded in 1995. We're the largest qualitative research software developer. We have offices around the globe, including the UK, Melbourne, Australia, and where I'm located in Boston, Massachusetts. We're using academic, government, nonprofit, and commercial organizations. We have over 1.5 million, over 1.5 million users worldwide, with 72% of universities within the United States using NVivo and 86% of universities within Canada using NVivo as well. So NVivo is a #1 software for qualitative data analysis. In government, it's used by policymakers to analyze data for evidence-based policy development. Commercially, it's used to organize and analyze customer and employee feedback, social media comments, and competitor information. And in academia, it's used by researchers to produce rigorous defensible research that stands up to scrutiny. So here are some of the leading research universities that use NVivo. Just to name a few, we have Purdue, Columbia, Harvard, McGill, Northwestern, Stanford, Duke, Johns Hopkins, MIT, and obviously the University of Ottawa as well. So why NVivo? Smarter insights. You can organize and store data in one place, ask questions of data that aren't possible manually, and find evidence-based insights faster. Better decisions. Smarter insights ensure you make these better decisions. And effective outcomes. You can reach valid, defensible conclusions and recommendations, create effective outcomes, positive change, and greater returns. So today, I'm going to take you behind the curtain to show you what's possible in NVivo. All NVivo projects follow the same basic process. The first step in any NVivo project is to gather your data. Then you create an NVivo project and import those materials. From there, you can analyze and explore your data through sophisticated coding and query functions and create a beautiful visualization that helps you learn more about your data and communicate it to others. NVivo Pro and Plus can handle many different data types, including text documents and PDFs, Evernote and OneNote, audio and video files, social media, including Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, web pages and other web data, images, email from Outlook, surveys, including poured directly from SurveyMonkey and Qualtrics or from a spreadsheet, and various reference management software such as EndNote, Mendeley, Webworks, and Zotero. We also have a partnership with SPSS, so for any of you working with quantitative data or might consider yourselves a mixed methods researcher, you can now directly import from SPSS as well. I'm getting some insight that people cannot hear. Is that an isolated issue? Can everyone hear? A few of you can respond. Let me know if you can hear me. That would be great. Okay, great. I'll respond to that person. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, let me just give me 1 second. Okay, thanks everyone. Appreciate the help with that. So here are some of the powerful visualizations and analysis you can create in NVivo. Um, we have a hierarchy tree map, a word tree, a mind map, a word cloud, a sociogram, and don't worry if you're unfamiliar with these visualizations, how to create them or what they're displaying. These are just a few of the things I'll go ahead and show you once we get into the actual software. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the actual software because it's what we're all here to see. So I'm going to go ahead and start in a blank NVivo project. The reason I want to start in a blank NVivo project is from my experience when I conduct these webinars, there's a wide range of NVivo users in attendance, all the way from novices and perhaps people who never even opened the software to people that have perhaps more experience with it than I. But I like to start in a blank project just to make sure that no matter what level of user you are, you get at least a little something to take home with you here today. Okay? All right, so let me kind of explain what we're looking at here on this blank project. So over here on the top is what we call the ribbon, and above the ribbon we have tabs. So we have the File, Home, Import, Create, Explore, and Share tabs. And as you can see, when I click on each one of these tabs, it changes what is being displayed within the ribbon. Now, I won't have time to show you all of these features and functionalities with you, but I'll have some of the more pertinent ones as well as how to code your data, import your data, and things like that. Okay, over here on the left-hand side are where your various folders will sit. So as you import your data, create your node hierarchy, your maps, reports, things like that, they'll be housed over here on the left. Now, I think the first thing I'm going to show you is how to import your data. Because let's be honest, if you don't want to import your data, you're not going to get very far in the software. Now, so in order to import into the NVivo, you import your data into NVivo, you simply go to the Import tab right here, and here in the ribbon is where you can bring in your various types of sources. So if you have perhaps another NVivo project that you want to merge with another, or perhaps take over for another coder, you simply click on this project icon over here, and captures what you're going to use to bring in web pages like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, things like that. This files icon is where you bring in generic Word document, interviews, text files, PDFs, audio files, video files, images, things like that. You can also directly import from Microsoft Excel or a text file, bring in your surveys from SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics, bring your quant data in from SPSS or a classification sheet. Here are your various reference management software such as EndNote, Mendeley, Reference, and Zotero, email from Outlook, and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Files icon because that's some generic Word document interviews I'm going to import. Now, in order to import these interviews, I'm simply going to highlight them, click Open, and Import. Now, these interviews I'm importing actually came from a real NVivo project called Environmental Change in Down East, North Carolina, and it was conducted at Duke University. Now, I mentioned this to you for a couple reasons. One, that way, as I'm working through the software, you realize what I'm doing is not arbitrary. And two, if you happen to own the software, or if you've downloaded the 14-day free trial, a sample project comes on the software, enabling you to get familiar with it prior to entering your own data if you so choose. And these interviews are actually part of that sample project. Okay? So now that I have these interviews imported, now these interviews are imported, one thing I might choose to do with them is what's called a word frequency query. The word frequency query is found in the Explore tab. Here it is, word frequency query. Now we can start to identify possible themes of our data using a word frequency query, which analyzes frequently used words and phrases in the data. So how do I do that? I'm simply going to click on word frequency. When I do, you'll note my screen splits. Now I still need to run the query, so I click on this tab over here on the right. And when I do, this is what I get. So let me just kind of explain what we're looking at down here on the bottom right-hand portion of the screen. So over here is a list of the most commonly used words from these interviews over here on the left. Now, length refers to how many letters are in each word, if that wasn't already obvious to you. Count refers to how many times that word appears in total from all of these interviews. And the weighted percentage refers to the percent this word makes up of all of the words from all of the interviews. Now, as you can see, the term east appears on top of my list. Now, to me, that might be considered a skewed result. The reason being, as I mentioned earlier, the name of this project was called Environmental Change in Down East, North Carolina. So to me, my interviewees might have mentioned the term East more in context to where they're located than it being relevant to my data. So let's say I want to remove this word from my list. I would simply right-click on it, add it to Stop Words List, click OK, rerun the query, and now that word is gone. What you also might notice is that the software automatically removes words such as is, it, the, filler words that wouldn't necessarily have any context to your overall data, okay? What you also might notice is that the software differentiates between words like think, thinks, and thinking, or fish, fishes, and fishing, and that specific grouping here, let me center that to make it more obvious. Grouping is on exact matches. Now, if I simply clicked here with stemmed words and rerun the query, it'll group all the words with the same root or stem word together, okay? So I just want to show you that real quick. For the purpose of moving forward, let me go back to exact matches. Now, right from this word frequency query, we get the first visualization that I want to show you, which is what's called a word cloud, and that can be found in the way bottom right-hand corner of the screen right here, with my cursor moving up and down, and here it is. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, once you have text-based data in NVivo, you can turn it into an interactive word cloud. Now, I do have a question. Would this data work in French? So yes, if your data is in French, this would all be displayed within French. You can also go to the File tab, go to Options, and go to here, change user interface, and you can switch it to French right here as well to make it so that everything we're reading out here within the software is in French as well. So that whatever your data is in, whatever language your data is in, that's the language it's going to work in, but you can also change the user interface to be in French as well. Okay, right here. Okay. Okay. So as I was saying, this is live to my data, interactive, and exportable. Now it's live to my data in that the larger the word appears, the more prevalent it was within my sources. Now it's interactive because right from this, oh, it's also, like I said, it's live to my data, interactive, and exportable. Now, in order to export this, I simply right-click anywhere on it, and I can export this word cloud. I just explained how it's live to my data. The larger the word, the more prevalent it was within my sources. It's also interactive because right from this word cloud, I can run what's called a text search query. Chantel does make an important point. The French I displayed, or the French, is actually France French. I don't believe we have Canadian or Quebec or other dialects of French. That would be French from France. Okay, so it's interactive because right from this word cloud, I can run what's called a text search query. Now, a text search query can be used to explore the use, context, and meanings of words to see if an idea or topic is prevalent in your sources. Okay, so let's say I want to gain more insight into the word water. Oh, and I forgot to show this. I'm sorry, let me go backtrack. I got sidetracked by the questions. So as you can see, the bigger the word, the more prevalent they are within your sources is what I was saying. So I want you all to make a mental note of the words jumping out at you, and I will do the same, although I will do orally for the purpose of this presentation. So the words jumping out at me are people, think, just, water, like, no, island, Henry. So if I go back to my summary tab over here on the right, people, think, like, just, no, water, Henry, island. These are the most commonly used words from the interviews, and therefore they're appearing largest in the word cloud, okay? Now, as I was saying, I can run a text search query as well. So let's say I want to gain more insight into the term water right here. I would simply right click on water and run a text search query for that. Now under my summary tab over here on the right, I get a list of my interviewees who mention the term water. Under the reference column right here, how many times they mentioned water. So as you can see, Barbara mentions water 14 times, Charles mentions water 8 times, Dorothy mentions water 9 times, and so on. Now note the difference. There's a reference column, but there's also a reference tab over here on the bottom right. Let me show you that right now. What the reference tab gives me is a little bit of insight into what my interviewees were saying about water. So once again, here's my interviewee written here in blue. This shows me how many times they've referenced the term water. So Barbara mentions water 14 times, and here are Barbara's 14 references to water. So let me show you these real quick. Barbara's 14 references to water. Now, perhaps you find these really useful, but this isn't quite enough information for you. You can simply go to the spread to box right here and go to like narrow context, for example, and rerun the query. And that will give you just a little bit more insight into what the interviewee was saying around the term water. Perhaps that's still not enough for you. You can go like broad context and rerun the query, and that will essentially give you the entire paragraph in which the interviewee mentions the term water. You can also customize it or get the entire source if you so choose. For the purpose of moving forward, I'll go back to none. Now, right from this text search query, we get the second visualization that I want to show you, which is what's called a word tree. And that can be found on the way bottom right-hand corner of the screen right here, and here it is. Once again, just like the word cloud, this is live to my data. It's interactive and exportable. Once again, to export it, simply right-click, and then you can export this word tree to like a PowerPoint presentation, Word document, wherever you see fit. Now, this is also live to my data. This is live to my data in that the words appearing to the left are what my interviewees were saying prior to the term water. To the right are what my interviewees were saying after the term water. So that's how it's live to my data. Now it's interactive because I can go up here into the ribbon and change how many words appear on each side of the word tree. So I can lower it all the way down to 1, although you gain very little insight from that, so I'm not sure why you would. And you also raise it into like the dozens or hundreds to gain more insight into what people were saying around the term water. So that's one way it's interactive. Another way it's interactive is, let's say as you're looking at your water word tree, you discover perhaps water isn't all that relevant of a topic, but water quality is. You can simply right click on quality, run a text search query for that. Now under my summary tab over here on the right, I get a list of my interviewees who mentioned the term water quality. Under the reference column, how many times they mentioned water quality. So Barbara mentions water quality 8 times, Charles mentions it 1 time, and so on. Now remember, under the reference tab, you can get a little insight into what they were saying about water quality. Remember, if you want more insight, go to the spread to box, go to narrow, broad, custom, or entire source. And now if I look at my word tree, water quality is now my root word. It is still live to my data, interactive, and exportable. Now that I have this water quality word tree, perhaps I want to save it as a node. In order to do so, I'd simply click on the Save Results tab right here. I would name it Water Quality, and I would click OK to save it as a node. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, a node is a bin or bucket that holds qualitative data. Nodes gather related material to one place so that you can look for emerging patterns and ideas. You can create nodes automatically through a query, like I just did through a text search query, or you can also code and create them manually as well. Okay? Now, as a side note, I just want to show you this real quick. If you go to the Explore tab, you can also run a text search query directly up there. I only mention that so you realize you do not need to run a word frequency query or use the word cloud in order to run a text search query. If you have a particular word or phrase you want to look up from a source or a group of sources, simply run a text search query directly up here under the Explore tab as well. Okay? So any questions about the word cloud, the word tree, the word cloud, or anything like that? So George wants to know, is there a way to distinguish between interview questions and responses? That is actually dependent on how you set up your interviews. So for example, if I show you this interview right here, it'll show you we have Henry, who's the interviewer, asking the questions, and then the interviewee responding. Now, what you will note when I ran the word frequency query is that Henry became a very prevalent word. Now, the reason for that is because his name is written as the interviewer in all of these interviews. So therefore, it's coming up as a relevant or prevalent term. So you might want to remove names and or questions from your interviews because it will skew the results. So that's a good question. Thanks, George. Um, is there a way in a tree to associate a certain word to its closest qualifier or adjective? Um, no, you can't really edit the word tree in that way. You can, like I say, minimize how many words appear on each side of it, and you can reanalyze what that word tree looks like, but not really in what you were asking about. Can we have NVivo search specific sections within a document? Yep, you simply highlight that section and then run the word frequency query or text search query based on that highlighted area. Yep, you can certainly code a bilingual interview if you have it written in French and English. Assuming you understand both languages, you're more than welcome to code both. Okay? All right. Let's see. Oh, no, no. Sorry, gentlemen. Sorry, guys. Didn't mean to answer that. I meant to decline the call. Um, okay, so let me go ahead and move on here. Okay, so the next thing that I want to show you is what's called a mind map. That's also found under the Explore tab, and here it is, mind map. So a mind map may be useful at the beginning of your project to map out your ideas or potential node hierarchy. So I'm going to go ahead and call this early thoughts on coding. Now, when I click OK, my central shape, also known as my parent node, will appear. I'm going to go ahead and call this mapping potential nodes. Off that, I'm going to go into the rim, create a child node off that for a natural environment. And once again, I am basing this off the sample project. So you realize what I'm doing here is not arbitrary, at least not to me, it isn't. Off natural environment, I'll create a child node for water quality. Oops. Off that, I'll create a sibling node for landscape. Off that, I'll create another sibling node for wildlife habitat. Click back on my parent node, create a child node off that for economy. Off that, I'll create a child node for jobs. Off that, I'll create a sibling node for fishing. Off fishing, I'll create a child node for commercial fishing. And then I'll create a sibling node for recreational fishing as well. Now, let's say I have another idea I know is relevant to my topic, but I'm not quite sure where it fits my project quite yet. I could also create a floating idea, and that reminds me to come back to that thought a little later on to see where it fits in my project. And I'm going to call that community change. So there's my mind map. And by the way, if you want to change the format, you can do it. So you can make it a vertical mind map. You can make it a horizontal mind map. You can also change the fill color if you want to organize your node hierarchy by color, change the font size, all this good stuff you can do in a Word document. You can do here in your mind map. And then once you finish creating it, if you like it and want to export it, you can certainly do that by right-clicking. Or if you like it and want to use it as your node hierarchy, simply click up here, create as nodes, click OK. Now if I go to my nodes folder over here on the left, here's my floating idea of community change, my parent node of mapping potential nodes, my child nodes of economy and natural environment, my grandchild nodes of fishing, jobs, landscape, water quality, wild habitat, and my great-grandchild nodes of commercial and recreational fishing. Now you will note that I stopped at great-grandchild nodes. That was intentional and that is recommended. I think you'll find if you go much beyond great-grandchild nodes, you're kind of getting deep into the woods. You might find it difficult to organize your node hierarchy and code to it. All right, so there is your mind map. Um, And so, Christian, the mind map is used so to help you organize your thoughts like prior to your starting your project. What I like to equate this to is picture back when you were like in grammar or grade school, and your teacher asked you to write like a narrative or persuasive essay, and they were like map out or web your idea. So you came up with your supporting idea or your main topic, and your supporting ideas off of it. Same kind of idea. You're coming up with your main topic, and you're supporting ideas off of it. That's what I would equate the mind map to. Okay. Okay. And okay. So once again, to change the colors, you simply highlight it or click on whatever, and you go to here, fill, and then you can select the various colors right there. Okay. I'll tell you with other questions. How do you transfer the mind map into the node hierarchy again? Oh, that's so you create as nodes up here. Create as nodes is how you do that, and you click OK. No, if you create your node hierarchy first, it will not automatically create it as a mind map. You have to manually create that. Okay. All right. My pleasure. Okay, so that's what I want to show you in the blank project. Let me go ahead and transition out of here to the sample project to show you a few more features. All right, so here we are in the sample project. You would be able to access this, through your own NVivo as well. Okay, so now that we're in the sample project, I think the next thing I'm going to show you is how to code your data. Because let's be honest, if you don't know how to code your data, much like importing your data, you're not going to get very far in the software. So let me show you how to code an image first off. So I think someone asked about this. So here's an image of a PDF. Or just an image in general. So here's an image. So let's say we want, here's an image of Marshallburg Harbor. This is in Virginia. So let's say we find these boats docked here, excuse me, not Virginia, North Carolina, excuse me. So let's say we find these boats docked here at some kind of yacht club, marina, fishing community relevant, and we want to code them. What we would simply do is highlight the portion of the image we find relevant, and then we would right click within the highlighted area and go to here, code. Now, when I click on code, it brings up my pre-existing node hierarchy, and therefore I can code this image to any one of my nodes, including a parent node, a child node, a grandchild node, or even a great-grandchild node. And yes, I can code this image to multiple nodes if I see fit. But let's say I find this image relevant, but it doesn't necessarily work with one of my pre-existing nodes. I would simply create a new node. I'm going to name that fishing boats. I'll click OK, and now you'll see that picture gets coded to my fishing boats node. Okay? Same theory holds true if you want to code the description of the image. Let's say we find this relevant. We would simply highlight the portion we find relevant, right click and code that once again to a new or existing node. So I'll put that to my fishing boats node as well. So I'll click that, and you can see that got coded there as well. Same theory holds true with interviews. So here's a generic Word document interview. Once again, if we find this paragraph relevant or any part of this paragraph relevant, we would simply highlight whatever we find relevant by highlighting it. And now you can either right click and go to code, but once you've started doing a lot of coding, you can simply highlight and go to here, code, and it'll bring up all your recently coded nodes. So I can now put this into fishing boats as well. Now, if you're reading this along with me, you would understand that this paragraph I'm coding has nothing to do with fishing boats, but I'm just showing you for the purpose of how to code your data, okay? So I would simply put that into my fishing boats node as well. Okay, same theory holds true with an audio file. Now this audio file has been transcribed, which makes it really simple. You can simply highlight the portion of the transcription you find relevant, and once again, code this to a new or existing node. So I'm going to code that to fishing boats as well. Now, now, let's say you have an audio or video file and you don't have it transcribed. It's rather silly, but if that's you, you can certainly work right from your timeline. So let's say you happen to know from 10 seconds to 50 seconds a relevant part of the interview. You can simply highlight that and then code that to a new or existing node. But let's say you don't know where the audio or the file is relevant. You can simply play the file by clicking here, and you'd use these two features to start and stop your highlight box to code it. So once again, I'm going to hit play. Now, one of the shortcomings of this webinar is you're not going to be able to hear the audio file, but you'll see that it's playing based on this blue bar going across the screen. So here it is, it's playing. Right now, the interviewer is asking a question, and now my interviewee is answering, and now this is all interview gold. This is all interview gold. And I'm going to stop that highlight box. I pause it, and now I can right click on this or go up to here to code that little section to a new or existing node. And what you miss is she's essentially talking about the development in the area. And while she does not essentially oppose the building of affordable housing in the area, she doesn't want to sacrifice the environment around her for that. And so that's what this is all about, the development and the environmental impacts of that. Okay, so that is coding an audio file. Same theory holds true with a video file. So here's the video file. Once again, this one's been transcribed, which makes it quite simple. You simply highlight whatever you find relevant, and then you can code that to a new or existing node. Or once again, you can highlight or play a portion of the timeline and right click and code that once again, to fishing boats as well if I so choose. So Miriam wants to know, when coding interview data, can you highlight them in different colors corresponding to the nodes? So Miriam, unfortunately, in NVivo 12, that is not possible. Fortunately, actually a new version of NVivo has been released. University of Ottawa is eligible to get that new version. We just haven't gone through that steps yet. So everyone in Ottawa has NVivo 12 right now, but you are eligible for the new version of NVivo. And I'm going to work with the people in charge of the site license to get the new NVivo for you. But once you get the access to new NVivo, yes, that becomes possible. Every coding you've done gets assigned its own individual color. That way, when you look at the highlights, the colors are associated with particular nodes. Okay. Can you transcribe audio data through NVivo? Yes, actually, that brings me to my next point, which is the reason I find it silly to not have your audio or video files transcribed is NVivo has released its own transcription service. This is found under the Create tab, and here it is, NVivo Transcription. So I simply click on that, and it logs me in because I've already created an account. And then I can simply add my files. So I go into my files right here. I'll go to my interviews, and I'll select like the Helen file, for example. It then uploads the file for me. I don't know why it's failing to do that. That's odd. Why aren't you doing that for me? Let's see if maybe Ken will work. Oh, duh. It's because I've already upgraded to the new NVivo, and it's not letting me work on this. But what will happen is when you upload the file, it then asks you what language you want to transcribe into. And yes, it does work in 28 different languages, including French, Spanish, English, Portuguese, German, Greek, Arabic, I don't know, many, many different languages to transcribe your data into. Okay? So that's how you work with NVivo transcription. And by the way, NVivo transcription does use artificial intelligence. And there's multiple benefits to that. One, no human eyes are viewing your data. Two, it can transcribe your data rather quickly. So an hour-long file typically takes about 30 minutes to transcribe. And it has typically about 80 to 90% accuracy rate. Accuracy is dependent on the quality of your recording. Is it, minimal background noise, one-to-one speaker, that sort of thing? And by the way, there is a server located in Canada, so your data does not leave the country. Okay. All right. So that is working with audio and video files, and interviews. Now, the same theory. Now, NVivo is a great tool for a lit review, not only because it becomes a single source where you can put all your bibliographic information, but also because you can import a PDF into the software and treat it as if it was a generic text document. So what I mean by this is when you import a PDF, there's no longer a need to convert that to a text or doc file. NVivo simply recognizes the text in a PDF, so I can simply highlight whatever I find relevant and code that to a new or existing node. So I'm going to code that to my fishing boats node as well. So again, as a transcription tool works with different languages within the same document. So yes, you are going to select the language to transcribe the document in. So yes, and it can work in it can read up multiple languages. Okay. Okay, so that's working with a PDF file. Let me drive that point home a little further. Here's another PDF. This one's of an online newspaper. So once again, as you can see, the software recognizes the text, so I can simply highlight and then code that to a new or existing node. So Simon, here's what I'm working on right now, an online newspaper. So as you can see, it can highlight right from a PDF. Now let's say though, you import a PDF and for some reason or another, the software is not recognizing the text. This is rare, but it can occur. This usually happens if you have a grainy or granular, like an old photocopy. And Simon, this might be speaking to you. This could also be relevant if you're one of these people who likes to hand write your notes and then import it as a PDF. If this is you, don't worry, I have a workaround for you. So let's say you import this PDF and the software is not recognizing the text. What you would simply do is click here on this region feature, and now you get a cross-hatching over your PDF. And now you can treat that paragraph as if it was an image by highlighting it. And now I can code that to a new or existing node. So I'm going to code that to fishing boats as well. The same theory holds true with an image within the PDF. So once again, let's say we find these gentlemen dumping oyster shells in the ocean relevant. Not sure why we would, but let's say we do. I would simply highlight them and code them to fishing boats as well. Okay? Okay. Same theory holds true with social media. Now here's some Twitter feeds. So these Twitter feeds were exported into Excel and then imported into NVivo. And that's why they have the format they do. But now I can code to the tweet ID, the username, the tweet, the retweet, the hashtag, the mentions, whatever I find relevant. By doing what? By simply highlighting whatever I find relevant. Excuse me, highlight whenever I find relevant. Hello. Highlight whenever I find relevant. And once again, coding that to a new or existing node. Same theory holds true with surveys. By now, you should probably be able to tell me how to code your data. What do? That's right. You simply highlight wherever you find relevant and either right click and code it to a new or existing node, or go up here into the ribbon and code it to a new or existing node. Okay? All right, so now that we've done a bunch of coding, let's actually see what that looks like. So I'm going to go to my nodes folder over here on the left, and here's my new node that I just created called fishing boats. As you can see, there's an 8 and a 12 right next to this. What this is representing is that I worked in 8 different files or data points, and I coded 12 different references from those 8 sources. Let's go ahead and take a look what that looks like. So I'm going to click into the fishing boats node, and here's what my coded data looks like. So here's the first image of Marshallburg Harbor I showed you. Here's a portion of the image I coded as well as the paragraph. And if I click into it, it'll show you what I coded right there. Although it shows everything, that's not a great example. Let me go back to my fishing boats node here. And so here's the paragraphs I took. Here's a portion of the timeline from Helen's audio interview as well as the actual transcribed part of the interview I coded. Here, let's look into this PDF right here. So for example, this is the one where I coded the paragraph as an image and a photo as an image. So it shows me the parts I highlighted right there. Okay. So that's coding in a PDF as well. Okay, so that's coding various types of sources. Oops, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to undock everything. I meant to close everything. Sorry, this is going to take a second. Ugh. Sorry, guys. Okay. No, stop undocking. Stop undocking, please. I left too many things open. I undocked it all. I apologize. Oh my goodness, please stop. Okay, let's get rid of all these. Sorry about that. Okay, so um, okay, so once you've done a lot of coding in NVivo, okay, let me backtrack. The next thing, that I want to show you is the matrix coding query, and that's found in the Explore tab. And here it is, the matrix coding query. So once you've done a lot of coding in NVivo, you can use the matrix coding query to cross-tabulate or look for overlaps among nodes or nodes and attributes. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, the term attribute refers to quantitative data. So this is a great tool for anyone that works with SPSS or might consider themselves a mixed methods researcher. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on the matrix coding query, and this is what it looks like. So let me go ahead and populate this. So I'm gonna click on this plus sign, select items, and I'm gonna go to like my nodes folder over here, and I'll select these various natural environment nodes right here. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to slide this to the right, and I'm going to go to this plus sign and select these items. And this is what I'm going to compare those nodes to. So I'm going to go to my case classification folder, my person folder, generations down east. I'm going to select first generation down easters, second generation down easters, and 3 or more generations down east. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to run the query, and this is what I get. No, Amy, you can certainly import, 300 pages and start coding that. I mean, I wouldn't say that's the easiest way to work, but it shouldn't slow down the file as opposed, with working with a document that size. Okay, so this is the matrix coding query. Once again, this is live to my data, interactive and exportable. So once again, to export it, simply right-click, and then you can export the node matrix. Perhaps before exporting it, you might want to make it more aesthetically pleasing. You can do that up here in the ribbon. I like the blue-white one. The reason I like blue-white is no relevant data, the cell remains white. The more pertinent it is, the darker the cell gets. So my eyes are immediately drawn to this cell right here. Now, what this is showing me is how many mentions there were by people in this area for 3 generations, 2 generations, and 1 generation about these various natural environments. Now, I find this really intriguing. As you could see, there are no other mentions. Now, I guess, so what this is showing me is that there were 68 mentions by people in the area for 3 or more generations. Now, as I was just saying, I find this really intriguing because as you can see, there are no other mentions greater than 23, also about water quality, by the way, but this one has 68 mentions. So that's how it's live to my data. Now it's interactive though, because I can click into this cell to see what those 68 mentions were by people in the air for 3 or more generations. Before I do that, I also want to show you can get a chart view of this if that so pleases you. This is also live to my data and exportable as well. Okay, let's go back to the node matrix though. So like I said, let's say we want to find out what people in the air for 3 or more generations are saying about their water quality. I'm going to simply click into the cell to find out. So right away, I see the term bad, or see the word, the phrase bad water quality. I see the term pollution. What else can I find? Um, Being reduced by pollution, getting worse as time goes on, no controlled development, not good, run from farms, damaging the quality, critical to the way of life, great resource being squandered by pollution, getting worse. I'm starting to gain some insight into what people in the air for 3 or more generations think about their water quality. Doesn't sound good, by the way. So that's how it's, live to my data and interactive. But let's say though, as I'm looking at this data, I think, I'm not really interested in how many total mentions there are, but how many people made those mentions. What I would simply do is right click, go to cell content, files coded, and go to all classifications. When I click on all classifications, you'll note the numbers have changed. Where there used to be a 68 is now a 6. What I just did is I moved it from total mentions to how many people made those mentions, which gives me new insight or perspective into my data. Because originally I was like, wow, people in the area for 3 or more generations are so concerned about water quality that they mentioned it 68 times. But now I see maybe people in the area for 3 or more generations aren't so concerned about water quality. Maybe just 6 people in the area for 3 or more generations are so concerned about water quality that they mentioned it 68 times. Like I say, new perspective into my data. So that's working with a matrix coding query. Okay. Now, the next thing that I want to show you is what's called the cross tabs. That's also found in the Explore tab. Here it is next to the matrix coding query, and for good reason too. It's actually very similar to the matrix coding query with a couple distinct differences, which is why I want to show it to you. So if I click on the cross tabs, as you can see, the setup will be very similar. So I'm going to click on the same plus sign and go back to the natural environment folder just to show you how I'm comparing apples to apples here. So here are my various natural environment folders once again. And by the way, some of these might look familiar to you from when I created my mind map, such as landscape, water quality, habitat, things like that. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and click OK. But now instead, when I flick to the right, instead of looking at another plus sign and looking at a single attribute like generations down east, I can now compare those to multiple attributes to get a little bit more granular with my data. So I'm gonna look at generations down east and I don't know, gender, for example, and rerun the query, and this is what I get. So this is how it differs from the matrix coding query. One, you can look at multiple attributes, like I said, to get a little bit more granular with your data. But two, you also get a total sign on the bottom of each column and at the end of each row, okay? This is still live to my data, interactive and exportable. And you can also play around with this. So for example, let's say I think, maybe generations down east isn't all that relevant, but age group is. So I can change that and I can run the query. Now I see I've, 5 people from age 30 to 39, 3 females, 2 males, and whether they mention these various natural environments, okay? You can also switch these, by the way, if you want gender on top, you can simply run the query. Now I see I had a total of 40 females and which age groups they fall into, and where they mention these various natural environments. Like I say, it's a way to get a little bit more granular with your data. Now, the question has come up, how do you assign gender to these cases? So what I did here, what you should do, is for each one of my interview participants, I created what's called a case. So here's my case, my people. So here's my interview participants. So for each one of my interviews, so as you can see, up here in my files, I had interviews, right? So, but each one of my interviews I created as a case. And when I assign them, when I create them as a case, I can then right click and go to case properties, and then I can assign attribute values. So I can create new values. These are all populated already. So I can create new values such as age, race, gender, socioeconomic standing, things like that. And then I can assign, so I create a new attribute. I can assign the values within them, and then I can assign those values to the individuals. And that's how I can then create these sorts of queries. Now, if you have this demographic information in like an Excel spreadsheet, you can simply import that into NVivo, and it's going to auto-populate those demographic information for you. My pleasure. Okay, so how do you create a case now is coming up? So I would simply look at my interview participant, I'd right click and create as, why is that not coming up as cases? There we go. So I go into my, that's why I was in my cases folder, duh. So I go to my interviews, so I select an interview, I right click, I go to create as, and then I can create it as a case right there, okay? Okay. All right, so that's working with the crosstabs feature. So now the next thing that I want to show you is what's called auto coding. Now, look, I know for a lot of traditional qualitative researchers out there, the thought of auto coding is blasphemous. You like to be saturated in your data, have full control of the coding that takes place. I understand that, believe me, I do. But there's a couple of reasons I want to show you auto coding. One, let's say you're new to qualitative research and you're having trouble getting started. You can use auto coding to identify some themes on where to take your project. Conversely, let's say you're an experienced qualitative researcher and you've just completed your project. You can use auto-coding, one, to identify some themes that perhaps you overlooked to further saturate your project, or two, for coding validation. So let's say that the software agrees with the findings you did by hand. Well, that adds a certain level of rigor to your research, which makes it more valid, which makes it publishable. Now you can add it to your CV. Now maybe you're getting tenured, and now you're getting places. So that's why I want to show you auto-coding. So what I did is simply highlight some of my interview participants. I go up here into the Home tab, Auto Code. Now I can auto code for theme or sentiment. I'm going to choose theme because I find that more interesting. What I also want to show you right here is, see this use existing coding patterns. You can also use this. This is a different level of auto coding. So what this does is, let's say you code 20% of your data and you want the software to finish the rest. It will use machine-based learning to pick up your coding patterns, and it can actually complete your coding for you. Now, the more coding you do, the better it will get. The minimum is 10%. I would say the minimum is 20%, but I would say you should even do a little bit more than that to get it really accurate. But this auto coding I'm showing you is right from scratch. So what I simply did is highlight some interviews. I'm going to click identify themes. I click next. And right now, without even coding or looking at the data, the software is automatically identifying themes within those highlighted interviews for me, which is being signified by that green bar going across the screen. It then gives me a list of all the themes it identified, including subsets of themes right here. Okay. And then when I click next, it's going to ask me what I want, what the software wants, what I want the software to do with those themes. Now, if I was coding personally that data, I would probably code the sentence because I know what I'm coding. I can be granular like that. But because I'm having the software code for me, I'm going to want some context around what it coded. So I'm going to ask it to code the whole paragraph. So I'm going to code the whole paragraph. I click next. Where does it want me to put that information? Into a folder called auto-coded themes, which it creates automatically. When I click finish, this is what I get. I get a hierarchy chart displaying this information. Once again, this is live to my data, interactive and exportable. Once again, to export this hierarchy chart, simply right-click anywhere on it, and then you can export it once again to like a PowerPoint presentation, a Word document, wherever you see fit. Okay? Now, perhaps before exporting it, you might want to change the view level. You can make it high level or low level view, depending what you're looking for. It's also live to my data. It's live to my data in that the larger the box, the more prevalent that theme was within my sources. It's interactive because I can click on a theme and get a subset of themes within it. Okay. So there you have it. And by the way, when you auto code as well, you also get this graph right here. So this shows me the interviews I selected, the themes it automatically identified for me, and how many times those themes were coded within the interview. So I can then see Charles mentions business, once. I can click into that cell to see what Charles said about business. And let's see, where does he say it? Actually, he's talking about a business trip. So maybe that's relevant, maybe that's not. I don't know, but that's how you auto code. Okay. So that's auto coding. All right. I know I'm running low on time here, so I think I'm going to go ahead and exit out of here, make sure I have time to answer more questions. I also did want to mention for everyone here, this was the general introduction to the software. There is going to be a more in-depth training with people who actually know the software even better than I. The next training will be held on May 19th, and that will be the French version. So we actually found a French certified expert in NVivo to conduct a training in French. The following day on May 20th will be the English version. From my understanding, you're more than welcome to attend both. And I think there's some information internally about how to register for those. I actually don't have that information. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and exit out of the software right here. I was going to finish my PowerPoint, but I think here, let me see if I can just get to some relevant information here. All right, so here's some of the things I was going to show you that I did show you. Don't have to go over this. You guys already have a site license. So here's some helpful resources for you, by the way. So first off, you go to youtube.com and type in NVivo in the search box. There's a wealth of information there. I highly recommend you get as specific as possible. if, like, for example, if you want to refresh on how to do a matrix coding query, type in NVivo matrix coding query, there'll be a YouTube video for there. We also have an online help document. This is by far my favorite resource. If you go to the File tab in NVivo and then click on Help and then click on Help again, it brings you the online help document. If there's ever anything in NVivo I don't know how to do, that's the first resource I go to. Not only does it provide me step-by-step directions on how to do what I want, but it also provides me with what the query actually is used for or is intended for to make sure I'm using the proper tool. We also have free informational webinars. There's no limit to how often or how many webinars you join, so please take advantage of them. We also have an NVivo community. So this is where you can go to register for the NVivo community. It's run by my colleague, Stacy Penna. She actually used NVivo to complete her PhD, so she's a wealth of knowledge. This will actually help you. There is no cost or obligation to joining the community. Essentially, the whole point of it is to help you find other people who are doing similar research, whether they're in your same organization or across other organizations, help bounce ideas off of. It's really just like a way to network, find other people like-minded to help, with any ideas or best practices, things like that. We also have certification courses. If you want to become a certified expert, that makes you the expert at University of Ottawa. You can help your faculty, friends, students, staff, colleagues with their projects. You become the point of reference for all NVivo users. We also have a certified trainer opportunity that actually allows you to get your side hustle on as an NVivo trainer. You can actually charge people to attend your trainings. You keep the proceeds, so that's money in your pocket. If you're interested in becoming an expert or trainer, simply let me know. I'd be happy to send you information on those. So once again, here's my email address. Once again, please feel free to write that down just in case you have any questions or comments. I'd be happy to answer any of them. At this point, I'm going to open the forum for any questions there may be. And okay, in fact, so yes, this